Welcome to another episode of the Profitable Home Service Podcast. I am so excited for our guest today. This is Dave Sanderson. I met him many years ago at a marketing conference, and he impressed me so much that we've managed to stay in contact all these years. So let me tell you a little bit about Dave. Dave is an inspirational survivor, and we'll tell you a little bit more about that in a few minutes. He's an author, a philanthropist, and nationally sought out leadership speaker. When US Airways Flight 1549, or the Miracle on the Hudson, ditched into the Hudson River on January 15th, 2009, Dave Sanderson knew he was exactly where he was supposed to be. As the last passenger off the plane on that fateful day, he was able to use the skills and resources he'd learned throughout his life to not only survive, but assist the well-being and safety of others. He risked his own life in the frigid water to help other passengers off the plane, and despite the hazards to himself, Dave thought only of helping others. He emerged from the wreckage that day with a new mission: to encourage others to do the right thing when faced with a life-changing decision. This profound experience changed his life, and I think that's putting it mildly. Today, he travels the globe sharing his inspirational and motivational leadership messages to help people make a difference in how they do business and live their lives. Named one of Inc.com's top 100 leadership speakers, Dave travels the world to share his inspirational leadership lessons, raising over $14.8 million for the American Red Cross. Dave lives with Terry, his wife of 35 years, and has 4 children: Chelsea, Colleen, Courtney, and Chance, and they reside in Charlotte, North Carolina. Welcome, Dave. I'm so happy to have you on the show, and I'm excited to get to visit with you today.
Same here, Diane. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. We might have to cut that down a little bit. That's awful long, but thank you so much.
So when I met you, it wasn't too many years after that fateful flight, just a couple years after it. I was trying to think, how many years ago has that been? It was a long time.
It'll be 15 years in January.
Wow. And I remember walking out of that conference. I have no idea what else they talked about, but your message stayed with me. And it has really changed the way that I look at obstacles or challenges or things that get put in front of me. And I know you and I talked offline earlier about talking a little bit about overcoming a challenge, and how do you overcome a challenge like that one, or like any of the others that we've overcome in our lives?
Right, most definitely. And I think one of the things that really came out of that day is anytime you go through an experience like that, and I think everybody's got an experience like that in their life. Maybe not a literal plane crash, what I call a personal plane crash. It may be an auto wreck. It may be cancer. It may be something else, but something's going to hit you in your life, and you better learn how to overcome it. You better learn ways to bounce back from it, and that's what I was able to learn, and that's what I did, and that's what I try to teach now. Because right now, one of the things, Diane, we all know is coming out of COVID and the lockdown and everything else, this whole world is nothing but uncertainty right now. Everything is uncertain. And the world's moving so quickly as we're finding. Every 15 minutes, there's something changing in the world, and you got to be able to adapt and bounce back and be resilient.
Do you think the majority of entrepreneurs have that skill, or is that a skill they need to work on and develop?
Oh, I think everybody's got that skill, especially entrepreneurs. Because one thing about entrepreneurs, and I'm one, you're one, is you got to face a lot of obstacles. You're in it by yourself I'm a solopreneur, as I would, right? I'm in it for myself, and I've got to deal with things myself. So if you don't have the mindset of resiliency and being able to bounce back, then you're going to fail pretty quickly. Because, as we know, something's going to happen in your business, and that's what happened during COVID, right? The folks who could grow and expand are the ones who could be able to adapt very quickly and be able to move quickly and being able to not take it personally. A lot of people take things personally, so it gets inside them, and all of a sudden it starts stacking inside them. So I think part of being an entrepreneur is you learn how to be able to have like that Captain America shield, right? Bounce off, because something's going to happen when you're an entrepreneur.
And I think something that's going to happen happens on a fairly regular basis to most of us. It may be a minor episode, a bunch of those before you get the major one.
Yeah.
But as an entrepreneur, you have to constantly be aware and get that shield in place so that you don't let that arrow find its target. And then also, like you said, don't take it personally. Whether it's somebody putting a post out there on your social media page or a bad review or whatever that form that takes, those hurt. And we have to be able to be agile and quickly pivot and do what needs to be done to come out on top in those situations.
Yeah, you're correct. I had a situation. This was my learning experience as being a new entrepreneur several years ago. I came out of sales, very successful sales. So one of the things I had certainty in my life was I could drive revenue. I can drive revenue, right? Because I know how to do that and sell. What I wasn't good at, Diane, was on the back end. It's called accounts receivables. And when you're a little entrepreneur, you're trying to run it yourself, and all of a sudden you're getting revenue, great. And all of a sudden people are not paying you because you're not billing them correctly. They're not paying you for months. And all of a sudden you got a cash flow issue. So, I mean, this was my first experience as an entrepreneur where I had to bounce back because I had to figure this thing out because I had revenue. That's great. It doesn't mean anything if the cash is in the bank. So that was a learning experience for me. I use that example as telling people, yeah, all entrepreneurs have something come up pretty much on a daily basis. And hopefully it's not going to bring you down too much, but you got to be able to face it and move on.
Right. And you learned real quickly that you couldn't afford to be the bank. You had to let somebody else be the bank, and it couldn't be you as a fairly new business.
No, I mean, that account started dwindling, and all of a sudden, it's not filling up the way it was supposed to be, and all of a sudden, it's very noticeable, right? Very noticeable. So, and how I approached that is I found what I call my who for my how. I had to find somebody who was really good at that, who I could pay to deal with that, so I could deal with what I do best, what's called revenue generation at that point in time. So, yeah. That's what entrepreneurs do well, too. They find their who's for their how. I think that's an aspect of entrepreneurship that's why they grow as quickly as they do. They find people that do what they do really well and get out of the things they don't do well.
Right. And I think too often they try to do it all to save a couple bucks.
Yep.
And in the long run, I think that becomes a major profit leak for them. Since this podcast is all about profit leaks and being profitable, that I see them try and do everything. They're trying to do the janitorial duties. They're trying to do their own invoicing. They got their hands in their QuickBooks file. They're trying to do sales. They're trying to be a tech out in a truck. They're just trying to do it all. And the world is crashing in around them, and they don't realize the importance of where is your area of genius.
Yeah.
And how can you stay there? It sounds like you learned that lesson pretty quickly.
I did. It happened in my first couple of years and when I was doing this. And once again, I'll be very candid. I was cash flush for a while, right? I was cash flush. So when you have cash and you're driving revenue, a lot of problems you can just sort of gloss over, right? Until all of a sudden they come to light. And that was when it came to light for me. And so, I was very fortunate to start finding my who's to do these things because candidly, I'm not good at that. I don't have any passion for that. And if I don't have passion for it, I'm not going to be good at it. There are people like you who love doing stuff like that, right? Figuring out profits and revenue and balance sheet. That's great. I love paying people like you to do that so I can focus on what I do best.
But don't make me stand up in front of a big group of people and talk. I mean, I can do it and I have done it, but it is not where I shine.
Yep. And that's exactly it. Everybody's got their unique ability. I swim with the Navy SEALs, and this year we're swimming with special operations. And one thing I learned when I went back in the pool, I wasn't very good. There's people who've been swimming for 30 years. They're really good at swimming, but you get them out of that pool, whole different game. So you're exactly right, Diane. Everybody's got their niche. If I can help people understand what that niche is and focus in on it, then that's how I help people grow.
What are some of the tools that you've used to help people find their niche and their little area of genius so that they can grow?
I start off with 2 questions. I learned this back in my sales career, and I use this in sales all the time, but it really is when I work with people, like I coach and mentor people on different areas of their life. First two questions I always answer the same thing. What's most important to you, and what has to happen for you to realize that? Because what that does for me is this. If I find out what's most important to you, now I know where your purpose is. That's where you're driving to. And then when I ask what has to happen, they're going to give me their thought process. Well, if I get $1 million, if I do this or I do that. So now I at least know how they evaluate. And it comes down to what's called the 6 human needs. And those 6 human needs are the ability to have certainty in your life, the ability to have variety in your life, the ability to have connection in your life, the ability to be significant, the ability to grow, the ability to contribute. And what happens is this. I want you to understand those are the 6 needs that everybody's got. You have them and I have them. We all have them. But there's one of those needs, Diane, that everybody has that they drive to when they get in that stressful situation. You know, that when times get tough, they're going to go into one of their needs. Most of the time, people who are in accounting and engineering, their need is certainty. Their need is certainty. They want to be in control, right? They want to control things. That's why they call it a company a controller, right? They want to control. So when I understand this about somebody, Diane, if you're driving you with certainty, what I'm going to talk to you about and help you with is how you can build that certainty and build that muscle and certainty, so you're able to be able to face anything in that area head on. So that's how I do it. I learned that strategy back in 1989, 1990, and it served me to today.
That is really interesting. I've never heard anybody explain it that way, but I've never done sales before, other than a little bit my own company here. So that is really cool. Thanks for sharing that, Dave.
Yeah, I love this topic, Diane. So thank you for letting me open it up.
Oh, you bet. You can keep going. I'm your very rapt audience right now.
Cool. Well, yeah. The second part is, and this happened during the plane crash. Is one thing you learn when you go through a traumatic event. Well, it doesn't matter if it's a plane crash or not. First thing you got to do is you got to lead yourself. You got to lead yourself first before you can lead anything else in your life. Because most people start deferring it. They want other people to tell them what to do. Well, you know what? I want to be able to control. I like control, and I like certainty in my life. So part of leadership is first lead yourself first. But something I wrote about last week in my blog, and it actually came out when I was in Orlando now a week and a half ago. I spoke with somebody. One of the lessons my parents taught me about how to really lead, and they were leading a family, and leading in situations is first thing you got to do is you got to stop the chaos. You got to shut down. Don't dig the hole deeper. Basically, is what that means, right? All right, let's level set where we're at, so we at least start handling the situation. Because most people I found during COVID, it wasn't just about COVID. There was also social justice questions going on. It was also about the police. It was also about the election that never stopped going on and on. And people started stacking it in, right? Started digging it deeper and deeper and deeper. So they were so entrenched, right? And it's like they couldn't get out of it, right? And that's why you saw the suicide rate explode the way it has been. Because people got so stacked, they're like, I'm giving up. I'm checking out. And so one of the things we have to do as leaders and entrepreneurs, we got to show people there is hope. And that's why the Miracle on the Hudson still resonates today, because that story shows hope in times of tragedy. When no one gave up, everybody had hope, and there was a mission. And I think that's a great story for everybody to have in life, because in life, everybody's going to have that time, their plane's going to go down, right? So there's 3 things you got to do, Diane, when that's happening. First thing you do is you got to aviate. You got to keep your plane going. You can't dig it any deeper. Second thing you got to do is you got to navigate. That means you got to put together a process. You got to put together a game plan. And the third thing you need to do is you got to communicate with yourself effectively and others effectively. And that's the 3-step game plan that I teach, and I learn how to really get out of, the challenging or traumatic life events, or start growing. And that's how we did in our business. During COVID, we had to keep my plane afloat. I mean, no one was speaking. Everybody's behind Zoom, and it was chaos. So we had to stop the chaos. So we had to keep the plane afloat. Then we had to put the game plan together. We had to transition to speaking on virtual, so I had to build a studio and do things like that. And then I had to be able to communicate effectively with people, understand what's driving them. So same game plan. It's repeatable. Rinse and repeat.
You're an amazing man, Dave.
Thank you for letting me share, because I appreciate that. Thank you.
Right. How much do you think mindset comes into play in all of this?
I think that is the cornerstone. I think that is the North Star. Because most people in their mindset, they go into a negative questioning. I can't do this. I know. Why does this always happen to me? They start asking themselves lousy questions. So their mindset starts working on overtime. And Kaylee, I've done that. Everybody has these times, right? I mean, I'm not special. Everybody has it. But the people who have the mindset of, you know what? I've been able to do this once. I can do it again. Or I see somebody else do it. Let me model what they've done, and I'll see if I get the same outcome. So the mindset is really about resiliency. It's like, you know what? As long as I'm in the game, I'm in the game, right? And that's all I ask. Let me stay in the game long enough so I can at least get back to zero. Because one of the first things my sales vice president taught me back in 1987 was this: some days getting to zero is a good day.
I agree.
Right?
Yes,
In
some
business,
days that is a good day.
You just got sometimes just get back to even's good. So I've had that mindset this entire time. So you know what? If I could just get back to even, I may not win today, but I'm not going to lose today.
Yeah, it's amazing how important that mindset is and how much of an effect it can have on an entrepreneur, somebody in the home service businesses industry, because these things will happen, whether it's something in your family, something in your business, something in your industry, something way beyond your control. These things will happen. But if we can guard our mindset and if we can keep it where it needs to be and not let it fall off the rails, that we can actually be successful in pulling ourselves back, at least getting back to zero. And then from there, you can formulate a game plan. I remember many years ago, I had a fairly new business and we had a major earthquake in our town. Business was all hokey dokey one day and gone the next. No warning. Boom, gone. Buildings on the ground, rubble everywhere. And having to go through similar steps like you just explained to come up with what do I do? What's the next step? I had employees counting on me. What do you do? And how do you formulate that plan and keep going? And mindset's huge.
Mindset, and keep making sure you're still within your value sets too, your values, right?
Those core values.
Your core values are very important. That's why I think entrepreneurs who set up, and this is what we're doing right now. We're laying out, this is what the core values for our company. This is how we're going to make decisions. This is how we're going to go forward. And you know what? If it falls outside that, it's not within our realm. It's not meant to be. So, you're exactly right. I mean, I had the opportunity to go down to Florida after one of the hurricanes, and it got seeing the devastation in the people's faces. But one of the things I was trying to do is show them, hey, listen, you can bounce back. And there's people like the Red Cross. That's why I was there with the Red Cross here with you. You're not alone, right? You're really never alone. There's always somebody or something out there that you can use as a resource. It may not be a person, it may be a book, or maybe going online, to be able to get some information. You always have a resource. And if you have that mindset always, I'm not alone, I've always got a resource, then you can give yourself that hope. There is a possibility.
And as long as you have that hope, then you can put one foot in front of the next and just make one step at a time. You don't have to plan out the next month or year. You just got to get through maybe the next hour, maybe the next couple hours. Now I can get to the next day. And eventually you start coming out the other side.
Eventually you will. As long as you persist and maintain focus, right? Maintain focus. And, a lot of people lose focus. They start wandering off on things. And that's one of the things I talk about. Is one of the things I learned is you got to keep the main thing, right? Whatever the main thing is, you got to keep it the main thing, because so many people start veering. And that's why all of a sudden you start going off on the side of the road, right?
Are you talking about squirrel? Shiny objects?
Yeah, shiny objects. Exactly right. Very nice.
And then before you know it, you're doing everything but that one thing you're supposed to be doing.
Exactly right. So keep the main thing the main thing.
Yes. And then we wonder why so many small businesses go out of business. And I think it's because they don't realize these core principles of business: staying focused, leading your team, leading yourself, staying out of chaos. Some of those things that you've just been talking about, they're so important.
It takes time to learn. I mean, like I said, the first year and a half, I had a major cash flow issue, right? And in one of the parts of being a leader, you got to take personal responsibility. It was my responsibility for it. It was my, you know what? We stopped it. Once I figured out, we stopped it. And then we started, like you said, it wasn't overnight. We had to build it back, right? We had to build it back up. And about a year later, we're flush, right? So.
And I think as an entrepreneur, when you look back on those times is when you see tremendous personal growth.
Right. The accomplishment. You pat yourself on the back that, I did it. I pulled this thing out, right? Yes. I pulled this thing out. I don't know how I did it, but I pulled it out.
Yeah. And right? Then when the next wave comes, now your mindset says, well, we've been here before. It may not be the exact same thing, but we've been here before. We know we can do this.
Yep. All you need is to stack the victories, right? And one of the things I talk about, there's a book called The Gap in the Game. And it's an amazing book. And I've studied the book, and I actually write a lot about this book because most people live in the gap. They live in the future. It's like, I'm not good enough, or I haven't got there yet. I said I was going to make $1 million this year, and I'm not even close to it. Instead of living in the game, saying, look how far I've progressed. Look how far I've come. I have successes, right? But most people don't live in the game. They live in the gaps because the strategy on living in the game is this: you measure backwards. You don't measure forwards. You measure backwards. There's a lot of wins in your life. Just getting to this point is a win right now, right? Just being alive after COVID was a win.
Most certainly, yes.
Yeah.
And then I think it's important to stop periodically and celebrate some of those wins. We tend to just go next and grab the next thing and never stop and acknowledge, look how far we've come. Look at this obstacle we just overcame. Look at whatever it might be and say, look at what we've done. And take just a few minutes and just kind of look at that and pat yourself on the back, pat your team on the back, whatever needs to be done to plant that stake that says, we've overcome this. We've gained this ground. We've accomplished whatever it might be. And that always helps too. Helps keep that mindset where it needs to be.
Measure backwards. Look at all the wins instead of all the things you haven't accomplished yet. This book was life-changing for me when I read it because I lived in the gap so many times. I expect so much of myself, and I hadn't got there yet. And I was I was never like, why not me? I was asking those lousy questions, right? Lousy questions, lousy output, right?
Right.
So it changed my life. Where you know what? Look how much we've accomplished this last year. Or we're writing our 4th book right now. I've got my magazine, as you see in the back. So I show our team, look how much we've won this year. We may not be making $1 million yet, but we're winning.
We're winning.
And you want to be a part of a winning attitude.
Yeah. Yeah. And keeping that attitude and that mindset where they need to be allows you to continue winning as you go forward each and every day.
Right. Exactly right. Just win the day. Win the day. And that's what I think COVID taught me is if I can win today, I have another shot tomorrow.
That's right.
Right. I have another shot. And even though I'm sitting in my office by myself, not talking, to anybody personally, I have a shot. So,
Yeah.
And that's the same thing as you've heard of my story when I talk about it. When the plane crash landed, I opened my eyes, and the first thing my sense said was, I got a shot. Because at least I was alive. I wasn't out, but I was alive. So now I got a shot. Now it's up to me, right? It's up to me. And I'll bet on me. I will bet on me, right? So.
I think of your story every time I board an airplane. I think of your story.
And I hope you.
If something happens, it's up to me to lead myself.
That's right. Lead yourself first, right?
Yep.
Keep your head first, right? Lead yourself first. and then everything else, then you can start helping other people. So yeah. And I tell people get on planes all the time, pay attention. Pay attention.
Pay attention.
Things happen very quickly on a plane, and you may not realize it immediately, right? So pay attention all times.
Right. Dave, you truly are an inspiration.
Well, I'm on it. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be able to share some of these ideas and thoughts with you. And if there's anything I can do to help you and your team, you know how to get a hold of me.
You bet. And where could somebody go if they wanted to maybe listen to some of your, I don't know if you've got some pre-recorded videos and things out there that they could listen to, or if they want to find you on some other channel, where's the best place for them to go to find more about Dave Sanderson?
Well, thank you. Yeah, my website at davesandersonspeaks.com has got all that data. I've got my blogs, my videos, my audios. You can see me some of my speaking, so you can sort of understand some of the things I speak about. But every week, I post a new blog on LinkedIn, Dave Sanderson on LinkedIn. I suggest people go there because you'll get my latest content. And so every week you'll get new content, new thoughts, something that you may know, but may just trigger you to do something, take action. And that's so LinkedIn at Dave Sanderson or davesandersonspeaks.com.
All right. Thank you so much again for joining us on this episode of the Profitable Home Service Businesses. And we're going to say this is a wrap for this particular episode. Remember, it's not how much money you make, it's how much money you keep. Today, you can grab a free digital copy of my book, Path to Profitability, which shares 9 profit-boosting tactics that will transform your service business. Head on over to yourpathtoprofitbooks.com. Thank you again.